if there was an ad there that got that sales attribution, that didn't necessarily add additional sales to the business, it was a sale that would have happened regardless of whether or not there was an advertising.
Most people aren't getting to the bottom of the search page. Most people aren't getting to page 2. Most people aren't scrolling down product detail pages, getting to those, sponsored rows and clicking and searching through those very much.
What's going on, guys, and welcome back to That Amazon Ads podcast, where today we're going to be talking about brand defense, a highly controversial topic. We see a lot of people doing it wrong, and we're here to, I wouldn't say quite set the record straight, but at least share a lot of knowledge and experience that Andrew and I have gained over the years, and a lot of learnings that can instantly help you improve the overall profitability of your business by having a firm understanding of what is brand defense, should you use brand defense, who should use brand defense, and if you're going to use it, how to implement it. So, Andrew, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Yeah, this is an exciting one. People, I think, get this wrong more often than they realize, thinking and overvaluing the importance of brand defense. A lot of people overinflate how important it is to actually be running those tactics. So looking forward to diving into this. Got a lot of thoughts on this and should be very value packed. So stay tuned till the end.
And just so you guys know, this is actually going to be the last episode of the year. We have decided to take the month of December off from podcasting just to focus on family and other business matters, as I'm sure all of you can understand. This is also episode 78. So we have dropped an episode for 77 out of the past 78 weeks, the only exception being Christmas week last year. And this year we're deciding we're just going to take the whole month of December off, pick things back up in January with some exciting topics. We're going to have Dustin back on talking about the new AMC audience bidding adjustments, where you can increase bids for specific audiences within sponsored product campaigns. So lots of good stuff coming in January. But otherwise, for today and for wrapping up November and the year of 2024, let's dive into brand defense.
Something about you saying that this is the last episode of 2024 feels really sentimental to me for some reason. And yeah, anyway, I just want to mention that. But, let's dive into this topic, brand defense. What do we mean by brand defense? Let's just clarify before we dig into all this, what exactly we're talking about. So when we say brand defense, we're essentially referring to when you are targeting your own keywords or your own products in your ads. So if you have a brand name, you're targeting keywords that have that brand name in them. Or if you have multiple products in your catalog, you're targeting those ASINs specifically. So this is going after those placements on your own product detail pages, on your own searches. When people come looking for your brand, it's those top of search placements. Usually these tactics have a very good return on the ad spend. They have very high conversion rates. It looks really attractive on the surface, and it looks like those ad dollars are really efficient and driving really efficient sales, and they're super important to keep those running. And why would I ever turn those off when the returns are so good? We have a very different perspective on things and how we look at brand defense and what role that it serves. The alternative to that would be going after non-brand keywords, which would be things that have no brand in them, not your competitors, not yours, or going after competitor keywords, which have the competitor name in them. So those are the different tactics that you can go after. We're specifically talking about brand defense.
Now, we have at least 3 top mistakes that managers make when it comes to brand defense. Number 1 is not properly managing the segmentation across their campaign. So you should have a very, very clear delineation between your brand defense campaigns and the non-brand campaigns. A lot of times people fail to negate all of their branded keywords from all of the so-called non-brand campaigns, and also negate all of the ASINs, particularly for autos or category targeting campaigns. So that's a major mistake. The second is not managing the brand defense investment levels. So just spending way too much on brand defense. We'll come back to that in a second around what should those investment levels be. And then the third thing is, I see this quite a bit where PPC managers are trying to scale brand defense campaigns. And when we talk about scale, we mean growing the spend, growing the sales, optimizing it to get as much volume funneling through those as possible. I see a lot of people on their reporting calls with clients. They make it seem like it's such great news. They're like, man, our brand defense campaigns are rocking. They're driving so many sales. They're the best performing campaigns in the account. And it's like, well, yeah, duh. They should be the best. It's people searching specifically for your brand. So like, yeah, that should be driving better conversion rates than anything else. But when people are trying to scale those brand defense campaigns, it means they're harvesting, they're doing all of the same tactics, maybe even doing like single keyword campaigns for brand defense, really trying to get granular and dialed in single product campaigns, all these things, harvesting, increasing the bids. Like, wow, look at all these low ACoS keywords. Let's just crank the bids. Like, man, I can't lose. Every single dollar I spend is getting me $10 in sales. This is awesome. And we're about to dive into why each of those items are problems. But Andrew, let's start off by first going back to investment levels. What do you typically see when auditing accounts and how much they're actually spending on brand defense? Which, by the way, a lot of times people have like one brand defense campaign and it's only like 5% of their spend or something like that, which to us, that's not conclusive. We look at the search term reports to see how many branded ASINs and branded search terms are coming through all of their campaigns to get a proper read on that, because they don't sufficiently negate from all their other supposedly non-brand campaigns.
Yeah, so it's going to pretty widely vary, just depending on whether that brand even has search volume or not. Some brands that you work with, they don't have branded search volume. There's no brand awareness for them. It's just maybe a knockoff product or whatever it is. There's situations where they have zero branded spend. But in general, I would say that most accounts are somewhere between 5 and I've seen upwards of 30 to 50% of their total spend in some cases, just overly targeting through a lot of the reasons that you mentioned, not having the negation set up and doing that on a routine basis as you add more products and stuff like that, or as new searches come up, making sure you're doing that. But yeah, a lot of it looks good on the surface if you're just looking at the campaign level, but when you drill down to that search term level, you see all these long tail branded searches that are actually what's driving the volume and the sales inside of these campaigns. And so that's usually the range that I see. It's somewhere between 5 and 30% is usually the amount of their total ad budget that I see going towards brand terms.
Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the segmentation issue. You guys really need to download a search report, apply a filter for the campaign column for campaign doesn't contain brand or whatever your naming system is for those ones. If you name your campaigns, I was auditing an account today where we did this and I said campaign name doesn't contain brand, but that also filtered out all of the campaigns that were titled non-brand. You got to be mindful of that with the contains filter. So I got it down to all of the campaigns that were truly classified as non-brand campaigns. And then I just applied a search term filter for, which of these search terms are containing any variations of the branded search queries or any of the brand's ASINs. And it ended up being like 15 to 20% of all the spend in these supposed non-brand campaigns was driving traffic through branded keywords and sales. The reason why that's such a problem is it creates an inaccurate performance benchmark on how those campaigns and more specifically how those keywords are performing. So you could have a keyword where, well, we'll just go with tennis rackets again. We'll say you're selling Wilson tennis rackets. You're bidding on phrase match tennis rackets, and that keyword has like a 50% conversion rate. And you're like, wow, this is incredible. This keyword's doing so well. Look how strong our non-brand performance is. And when you look at the search terms, it's like 90% of the sales on that keyword came through Wilson tennis rackets because you didn't negative phrase Wilson. And so you're going to get inaccurate bidding calculations and you're going to be unable to properly scale the true non-brand. Like when you're going after tennis rackets, whether it's exact or phrase, like your goal is to grow the sales in those non-brand searches that are very relevant to your product and improve the ranking in there. So when you're not doing that, you can't properly control those investment levels and the bids and everything like that. And where things really, really get messed up is with the placement settings. Massive. So go back and watch our episodes on how to calculate placement settings. There's a lot of value in those, but the primary thing is that naturally you'll have a much easier time getting top of search placements for your branded searches compared to non-brand, just by definition, because your ad quality score, everything is super, super high. So if you have search terms that are mixing brand and non-brand, it's going to inflate the perceived performance of top of search. And then that will cause you to start increasing bids for top of search substantially because you'll be like, wow, top of search is doing 300, 400% better than everything else. So you're cranking everything up there. But really, that's just because all of the sales, or at least the majority of the sales that were coming through top of search, were from some branded searches that were coming through on that campaign because you didn't properly negate. So now your placement calculations are off. And then when you increase top of search by 300, 400%, now all of a sudden you're overspending on all the other searches that did not have that same level of performance and just creates a lot of issues there. So, majorly important.
Yeah, absolutely. I second that for sure. And you know, we've talked about like the mistakes that people make, and like, you know, oh, you shouldn't be spending this much on brand. You should try to like control, but why? The ultimate reason, the root of why you should be controlling these investment levels on your brand defense targeting and your brand defense spend is that branded sales are not incremental to your business. And when we say not incremental, we mean that if you weren't running that ad, you probably would have gotten that sale anyway.
Yep.
So if you're spending a whole bunch of money on sales that you were going to get anyway, then you're just wasting ad budget that could be allocated towards other things that are going after targets that are going to add incremental revenue to your business, and that they're
Mm-hmm.
driving sales that you would not have gotten had you not run that ad and placed it where you placed it with your ad. At the end of the day, it's just we need to control it, because if you don't, you're going to start spending a lot of money that's not actually contributing to growing the net sales of your business.
So, when we are talking about incremental sales, we are essentially talking about the opposite of organic sales cannibalization, which is probably worth an episode all on its own. But when we talk about sales cannibalization, what we mean are that the advertising are winning the attribution for sales that would have happened naturally, would have happened organically. So if someone's typing for Coca-Cola and I'm going to buy Coke, and I have full intent, like I'm searching for Coke. I'm going to buy Coke. That is like my main goal of shopping on Amazon right now. I go in, I click a Coke product, and I buy it. If there was an ad there that got that sales attribution, that didn't necessarily add additional sales to the business, it was a sale that would have happened regardless of whether or not there was an advertising, a sponsored product there. So that is what we call cannibalization, or more specifically, organic cannibalization. So these are antonyms. And with an incremental sale, the example would be, let's say it's a very competitive and crowded keyword, and your product doesn't show up anywhere on page one of the search results organically, but you have a sponsored product campaign running that is getting your ad to appear there. Someone clicks it, buys it. It's very likely, with 98% certainty, that that sale was truly incremental to the business. You would not have gotten that sale without that ad. And so that is primarily what we're after. And Andrew, I think you've done some tests. I know I've done some tests. We've done some tests together on a large
Yep.
brand we worked together on, but you did one even more recently to try to measure how much of the supposed attributed sales to these branded keywords, how many of those are actually incremental. The best way to do it is, it's called a holdout test, where you just pause all of the brand defense keywords and you measure what happens to the sales when it's on versus off. So you did one recently, right, Andrew?
Yeah, I did. And it wasn't necessarily my choice. It came directly from the client that this is what they wanted to do. And essentially what happened, this brand, you know, a pretty large brand, they get about 200,000 branded searches every single month. And they were spending somewhere between 5 and 10% of their $500,000 monthly budget on brand defense, with the idea that, you know, if they were not placing those ads there, that other competitors would be, and that they'd be losing a lot of their own branded share of sales to competitors that were running ads on their branded keywords. So the CEO said he wanted to test pausing that because he didn't think that brand was incremental. We kind of slowly did it through June as a test on certain products, but then we completely paused it in July. And so it is now mid-November. And so we've had it paused since then, and have since redirected and reallocated that budget to more incremental tactics. Are you ready to hear what happened to their sales?
Yes, please tell me.
So what happened was we used the search query performance report to track the branded purchase share. If you haven't watched the search query performance episode, go back and watch that. It's called The Best Data on Amazon. That will show you what we're talking about. But we just measured that purchase share month to month to month, and it didn't change on
Yeah.
branded terms.
And that is the proper, I think that is the best way to measure and evaluate the impact, because if you're only looking at total sales, obviously that can fluctuate a lot. Like, you could pause all your brand defense campaigns and total sales could go up or down, but like if non-brand is driving 50% or more of the total revenue, then obviously the total sales is going to move up and down with whatever the non-brand is doing. So looking specifically at those search terms in the search query performance, seeing if your brand lost purchase share, meaning out of all the sales that happened when someone shopped for that search term, how many of those sales did your brand own? And so, yeah, Andrew's saying nothing happened. So very, very key insight there.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing that happened was we improved our total ACOS is what happened. So
And that's what this comes down to. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so if you're spending, so this one brand that I was auditing just this morning, so very appropriate timing, this brand spent around $75,000 per month, and they had around $15,000 going to branded search terms, which is around 20% of all their spend going to brand. And just within sponsored products, that was around a third of their spend on just the sponsored product spend alone. So a third of their sponsored product spend is going to sales, going to searches and supposedly driving sales, but those sales very likely would have happened even without that. So you could probably chop that spend in half, and instead of spending 15,000, only spend like 5, 6, 7,000, and you're instantly getting back $8,000 to $10,000 of bottom line profitability. Because that is ad spend, that is pure cost. You just cut that out and put it straight back into the bottom line, and you're now $10,000 a month richer, and you can hire a new employee with that money. So huge savings and improved efficiency. So that's what's ultimately at stake. This primarily pertains to brands with high branded search volume, which we already started mentioning. But Andrew, do you want to add anything to that? Like what kind of constitutes good branded search volume?
Yeah. So when it comes to a lot of branded search volume versus a little branded search volume, as a brand owner, you should kind of know whether or not your brand is getting searched on certain platforms or not. But if you don't, I mean, there's a pretty easy way to tell. You can use different tools to figure it out and see if people are searching for it. But ultimately, the brands that get searched on Amazon and on all these other platforms, people already know about. People are seeing them on social media. They're running Facebook ads. They're running Instagram and TikTok influencer campaigns that are getting the word out there about the brand, basically creating that awareness. I wouldn't say Amazon's necessarily the best place to go to create awareness. There are ways you can do it, and you can track the lift in branded searches and all that. But generally speaking, to stimulate branded search, you got to go up the funnel, where Amazon's more lower in a conversion focused channel. These social channels are higher up the funnel. That's where you'd go to really focus on driving brand awareness. And that's what the brands that should be evaluating their brand defense budgets are typically doing. They're running these ads off platform. They're driving traffic, and that's stimulating customers coming to these platforms looking to buy things, looking for specific brands that they've heard of or certain things. Like it's going to be a lot different if you have a brand that people are actually searching for versus just like a knockoff product that isn't necessarily branded by any means. Like, for example, I bought a pack of journals the other day. There's a Moleskin journal, which is like a pretty popular brand for journals. And then there's just like journals that look exactly the same and are, generally the same product, just without the brand name on it. Which one's going to get more branded search volume? It's definitely going to be the one that has a reputable name that people recognize and understand. Generally speaking, those brands are getting in excess of 50,000 branded searches a month or more. And it, just keeps going up from there.
So you can definitely check your search query performance just to see what the volume is. If you're getting, several hundred searches per month, it's probably worth, setting up some brand defense. But like Andrew said, if it's a generic thing, then it's probably just not even worth it. You're not getting a lot of branded search volume, so it's not worth the effort to set up those campaigns just because it will make no difference. So just not worth the time investment.
When evaluating like who needs brand defense more, think about it this way. If you're Ziploc and you're running a Ziploc brand defense campaign and you've got a knockoff brand, let's say it's Harry's Ziploc or Harry's Bags. Harry's Bags needs to run brand defense probably more than Ziploc does. Because if Ziploc is running a conquesting campaign against Harry's Bags, then people know Ziploc. People are familiar with Ziploc. It's like that's already the the brand awareness has already been seeded by Ziploc. And so, the likelihood that they're going to purchase Ziploc instead of Harry's bags is still higher than, maybe another knockoff brand running that
Yeah. Yep.
conquesting campaign. So you have to kind of gauge like where you are. If you're a very small brand and you do get a little bit of branded search volume and you see that big competitor showing up on all over your searches, like maybe it does make a difference for you to have those brand defense campaigns running to prevent those sales from leaking out. And you can use your own data to kind of figure out if sales are leaking out to other competitors on your branded searches or not.
Which there is a term for this, by the way. It's called genericization, in which your brand has become synonymous with a generic term because your brand is so large. So it's also called a generic trademark or a proprietary eponym. But some other examples include Kleenex. If people are looking for tissues, they might just be searching for Kleenex, not necessarily for that brand specifically, but they're looking for tissues. Band-Aids is a massive one. Like Band-Aid is an actual brand. And so you also have Xerox and Velcro. If you are one of those brands, like if you are Band-Aid, then yes, you are the exception to the rule, and your brand defense is probably going to be a very large portion of your budget because your brand is the category. So if you're Band-Aid, yeah, like 50% of your spend is going to be on brand defense, and I think there it's warranted because your brand is synonymous with the category essentially. So that is the exception to the rule. But for everyone else whose brand is like Dude Wipes, for example, that's pretty specific. I don't think that's a generic thing where if people are looking for wet wipes, they don't think Dude Wipes is like what they're looking for. Like that's specific to a brand. So for those folks, I would recommend that your brand defense should probably not be more than 10% of your total spend, which might be shocking to some people. I mean, that 10% is a totally generalized figure based off of all of the averages of everything we've seen. But what you want to do there is not overspend on cannibalizing organic. Take that profit, put it back into the bottom line, and that 10% is only going to go to where it matters most, which is typically going to be just those few top of search placements, is primarily that. So Andrew, let's talk a little bit more about actually implementing this brand defense and what that looks like and what the actual goal should be.
Brand defense is not all bad. There is a time and place for it. And if you implement it correctly, it can be effective at stimulating and creating a better customer experience, which generally was what I hear people talking about whenever they're talking about brand defense and why it's important. It's like, okay, when people search my brand, I want them to have a good experience I want to represent my brand in a positive way to where, if somebody searches, I don't want them seeing all these other competitors and stuff like that. You're not controlling the frame of that customer's journey as much as you might be able to. So generally when people are shopping on Amazon, a majority of those searches or those clicks and the purchases that happen above the fold or pretty early on in those search results. Most people aren't getting to the bottom of the search page. Most people aren't getting to page 2. Most people aren't scrolling down product detail pages, getting to those, sponsored rows and clicking and searching through those very much. Most of that traffic, most of those purchases are happening at top of search. So when it comes to your brand defense, we recommend that you should take that same approach and occupy the placements that are most vital and ignore the stuff that's not, because we know that brand defense isn't incremental or not as incremental as non-brand. And so why would we spend more than we absolutely have to create that frame or create that environment that we want when the customer searches for us?
And something else to keep in mind is, what is the average conversion rate of different keyword classifications or funnel stages? So if we have the different classifications, like there's brand defense, then there's long tail, super low funnel non-brand, and then there's shorter tail, upper funnel non-brand. Those conversion rates are working their way down, 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 and getting worse and worse and worse. The worst conversion rate is always going to be competitors' branded terms. That will always be the worst performing conversion rate. So a lot of times, like let's just say you average a 10% conversion rate on non-brand keywords. When you're going after competitors, if someone's searching specifically for Dude Wipes and you are not Dude Wipes, you're someone else and you're bidding on that, two things are going to happen. Number one, you're going to be paying a very large premium on your CPCs for trying to conquest them because you just don't have the ad quality score. So Amazon essentially penalizes you, where the better your ad quality, the lower your CPCs, the worse, the higher. So going after a competitor, it's very high CPCs and very low conversion rates. So both of those two items working together compound into a horrific ACOS. And I almost never see people run competitor conquesting keywords profitably. It's practically impossible because you're going to be getting close to like a 1% conversion rate on the highest CPCs. So if you have a 1% conversion rate, that just means when you're trying to conquest that brand, only 1% of the time did you steal a sale. And that's not even relative to all of the searches because you're also going to have a lower click through rate. So the chances of someone searching for a brand, if they see that you are not that brand, they're probably just not going to click you at all. And then even if they do click you, it's only going to be a 1% chance of them purchasing that product. And so, point being, if you can successfully steal some competitors, it is such a small amount compared to what that brand is actually driving, because they're driving probably 80 to 90% of the click share, as well as like 90% plus of the brand share. Now let's take it back to yourself. When you are trying to defend your brand, if there's someone else who's conquesting you, the chances of them actually stealing a sale is extremely small. I think a lot of brand owners freak out when they see, one competitor on their branded search and they think that they're losing like 80% of their sales to this competitor. Like, people aren't clicking it. Like, if I'm searching specifically for dude wipes, I'm not going to be going after these other people. I might, but chances are that like I want dude wipes. And so yeah, that's the big thing to keep in mind, is that the actual risk of losing sales to competitors if they're conquesting you is extremely small. Now, as we said, if you are going to defend your brand, we are big advocates of defending that top of search because, go back and watch our episodes on those placements again. But we talk about the different conversion rates across different placements. Product pages are the worst performing placement. Top of search is by far the best for 80 to 90% of sellers. So a lot of people try to fully saturate the product page placement with brand defense, which is extremely expensive and doing nothing. The competitors are already only converting at a 1% conversion rate across all of their campaigns on your terms. Then the conversion rates on the product pages specifically for those are probably like 0.25%. It's just going to be such a small number. And so it does not make sense for you to drop tens of thousands of dollars a month trying to defend all of those placements where it really doesn't matter. And for this other brand I was auditing, it was like in their brand defense, as much as they were overspending, like half of that spend was going to product pages. So I don't know if they were intentionally trying to like fully defend the brand down there, but it's just big waste of money, really not worth it because there's just no incremental value. And the risk of competitors being there is extremely small. So just not worth the funds.
And now I'm going to tell you a reason why you should go after competitor keywords and when it makes sense to actually go after competitor keywords. If you remember, we were just talking to somebody yesterday about their Canadian market versus their US market. And we were going after competitive terms in the Canadian market. And the competitor that we were going after didn't have their full product selection up on the Canadian marketplace or just didn't have all their products up. And in those scenarios, they had 0 ads running. And so this big competitor wasn't running ads and, didn't have all their full product selection up. And we were targeting their terms and getting a majority of our ad sales from those like competitor keywords. Yeah. It was a pretty substantial portion. So, and that's not the only example that this has happened to me on. I have another client that I work with that sells some stuff in the swim category. And, one of the big competitors in the swim category is obviously Speedo. That's the one that everybody's heard of. But Speedo doesn't necessarily control their distribution on Amazon. They do it through a bunch of distributors and things like that. And so their full product selection isn't available on Amazon. Their listings don't always look that good. They have a lot of issues with their overall product selection. And so we can conquest and get very high conversions on targeting their branded terms, specifically around product selections that we know that they're not fully stocked up on or represented on for Amazon. And so if you're in some of those sort of situations, if you happen to be, it can be very fruitful for you to run competitor keyword and product targeting campaigns.
That is a weird exception, but a good point where the competitor brand has a ton of volume, just a ton of volume, but they're not running any ads in Canada. So we were able to jump in there and steal a lot of sales from them just because they weren't running any ads at all. Now, the conversion rates on those They still weren't great compared to like all of the other potential search terms, but that was a little bit of white space, and that was unique to Canada. In the US, that same brand has probably 100 times larger budget than us, and so that does not work in the US. Trying to conquest them there, ACOS is like 300%, because they have deep pockets, and not only are they defending their brand, but everybody's bidding on that brand. So yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when it does come to implementing brand defense, I would recommend only focusing on keyword campaigns, not product targeting. The primary reason is because product targeting is not, it doesn't mean you're defending the product pages. So if you're targeting your own products, it is not meaning that you are placing it on those product pages. It means that you are defending all of the possible searches where your products appear, which includes non-brand. So it's going to be a weird mixture of brand and non-brand, and it's just going to be a weird metric that you're better off just focusing on the keywords. Go back and watch our episode titled "Product Targeting Isn't What You Think It Is." That will go into more depth around that. But yeah, basically, product targeting is keyword index targeting for all of the keywords that product has been indexed for, including branded, including non-brand. So I would just focus on keywords. And when it comes to the campaigns, what I typically do for simplicity, I don't go with a single product campaign approach. We did that episode on campaign structure. We recommend for every ASIN, 5 campaigns for each one, different strategies for each campaign. When it comes to brand defense, I usually like to just have one brand defense campaign and single product ad groups. I do think single product ad groups are important because you will have different products that have different keywords, because you could have like, I could say like large Band-Aid versus small Band-Aid, and I'm going to want to like make sure I'm showing the right product for those. And additionally, the core strategy that we really recommend is, with your brand defense campaigns, you should be primarily, if not solely, promoting your weakest products. So those are the products that are either super high inventory and you need to get rid of them, or product launches that just don't have a lot of reviews yet. Those are great to defend your brand with, because you're accomplishing two things at once. Number one, you're defending the brand. And number two, you are helping kick off some products that need some reviews, and you're advertising to a very friendly audience. So that will help contribute to increased BSR for that product. It'll just really it will really help succeed in the launch for a new product within that brand. If you tap into that strategy, I wouldn't recommend doing your top sellers, because your top sellers are probably already ranked number one organically. So, if you just have your best product appearing twice, it's like, it doesn't really need more sales necessarily. It's better to take advantage of that super warm audience that's very likely to buy from you, and get them to try a new product from your catalog, or have them help you get rid of inventory if you're overstocked on something.
That's a good point. I've even seen where Amazon, when you search your own branded terms, it'll put the organic listing ahead of the sponsored listings sometimes, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, I love that piece on product launches too. It just gets you right in front of the right people, and the conversion rates are going to be much higher there. You can also use it to cross promote, and things like that. But yeah, good points there for how to use brand defense. Ultimately, there is a time and a place for it. It's just, in general, most people we see over indexing in the importance that they see for brand defense, and over indexing on the amount of attention that it really gets. And generally speaking, if you just stick to occupying those top of search placements, managing your investment levels, and not trying to scale these campaigns or expecting them to scale, and focus on stimulating branded search off Amazon, and harnessing those types of marketing efforts to actually grow the amount of people looking for you on the platform.
One final example, about a year ago, Andrew and I were working with a large toy brand, and for the brand defense, we just had one campaign, because it's also just simpler to just manage one campaign. But then you still have those different ad groups that you can decide to push one product more than another product, and also pause ad groups pretty quickly if you don't want to be supporting one. So this brand, like, one of their best selling products, it was like a $20 product. It had 50,000 reviews, averaging 5 stars. It's just like a bestseller in the category. It's flying off the shelves every Christmas. When people are searching for the brand, that product doesn't need any more help or promotion. So what we decided to do was, yes, we did some of like the newer products. So if someone's been buying from this brand, the brand also had extremely high loyalty. I think it was like 80% of the purchasers purchase another product later that year. So huge loyalty. So what we were focusing on were new products. So if people like us, they love us, let's get them to try these new products. And if they love it, they'll leave a review, all these good things. And we were focusing on higher AOV products. They had some play sets that were priced like $250 and up. And we largely like to push those because those would usually average a 1 to 2% conversion rate just because the AOV was so high. But in brand events, we could actually get a 2, 3, 4, 5% conversion rate on them. That's great because the margin on those products is phenomenal. So yeah, it's just a really great way to just grow the overall business. And in that sense, that's a unique thing where the overall sale itself was not incremental. Someone would have bought from us regardless, but with the higher AOV, there could have been some incrementality there in terms of convincing them to buy a more expensive product. So that's one other thing to keep in mind where we're only focusing on top of search. So we had pretty low bids, big increases for top of search. We actually weren't doing the classic strategy of like optimizing placements based on performance. We were not doing that. We were just making this a top of search only campaign, which is kind of a unique strategy, but we were focusing on just that top row. We didn't want any competitors there, and we were putting all of our largest AOV items, and that actually did have a small impact to the business in terms of incremental profit because it was larger AOV items with really good margins, and we were getting really low CPCs because of our ad quality score. So that would be my final tip and piece of advice for you guys.
Beautiful. Very well said. That's a great one to end on, Steven. Everybody else, make sure you like and subscribe. We'll be back first of the year, not the first of the year, the first month of the year in January. We'll see you then.
Peace out.
See you.